Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
I was working at Warner Brothers in the 90s, working on animation, like Steven Spielberg shows like Pinky and the Brain and stuff. And it was really great. It paid well. We're winning Emmys. We're, having a great time using full orchestras on all the sessions. And yet it wasn't really who I was. A comment that I would get from the producers a lot was, "Hey, Gordon, that was a great cue. Love it. But next time, maybe a little less Gordon Goodwin, a little more Carl Stalling." And Carl Stalling was the Warner Brothers composer that kind of defined this animation scoring techniques. And that was the guy we had to emulate at that studio. So I started to think, is this my life? I go to Warner Brothers and I write like they want me to write. Then I go over to Disney and I write what they want me to write, which is a perfectly noble way to make a living. But maybe is there a point where I need to plant my flag, and write stuff that I really believe in because my heart tells me this is the music that should happen. So I did it.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Good morning. Welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in. I want to say a quick thank you to my guest on last week's episode, actor, director, teacher, and founder of the Groundlings Theater, Gary Austin. If you didn't get to hear it, you can find all of our episodes at entertalkradio.com/makingit or download our app and take us with you. Be sure to tune in for upcoming episodes with guitarist Paul Jackson Jr., singer-choreographer Tony Basil, percussionist Lenny Castro, bassist composer Nathan East, and a behind-the-scenes look at Taylor Guitars. I'd like to take a moment to thank the companies that helped me sound my best in the studio and on stage: Blue Microphones, Seymour Duncan Pickups, Taylor Guitars, Mesa Boogie Amps, D'Addario Strings and Planet Waves, Motu Digital Performer, IK Multimedia, and Exotic Effects. So often I get asked questions about the creative process, so I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. You're really in for a treat, as I've invited my friends, some of the best and brightest in music, to share their stories on how they have influenced the music that has shaped our lives. I guarantee you're going to love it. So let's get started. My guest this week is Gordon Goodwin. Having amassed 21 Grammy nominations, 4 statues, and 3 Emmy wins, Gordon Goodwin is the most decorated big band leader in the 21st century. He is leader of Gordon Goodwin's Big Phat Band, an internationally known ensemble with a reputation as one of the most exciting large ensembles in jazz. The BPB has released 7 critically acclaimed records, its most recent being Life in the Bubble, which garnered 4 Grammy nominations and won the Grammy for Best Large Ensemble Album. Gordon's composing for film and television has garnered him 3 Emmy Awards. He has written and worked with artists including Ray Charles, Christina Aguilera, Johnny Mathis, John Williams, Natalie Cole, David Foster, Sarah Vaughan, Mel Torme, and Quincy Jones, to name a few. His charts are played all over the world, and along with his method books and CDs, he has been a source of inspiration and learning for thousands of young musicians. Goodwin is the host of a popular new radio program called Phat Tracks with Gordon Goodwin, airing weekends on K-Jazz, America's Jazz and Blues station. Please welcome my guest, Gordon Goodwin. Welcome to the show, Gordon.
Terry, is this it? Have I made it? Are you confirming that to me right now, that I actually have made it because I'm on this show?
Well, I would say that would be the determining factor. So, yes, congratulations. Welcome to the... Yeah.
And when does the money come exactly? Do you give me the money, or when does that happen?
Actually, that was one of my questions to you. And one of my questions to all of my artists is, Although you've already made it, when does the money start coming in in a consistent manner?
I suspect I might have picked the wrong genre. If I was doing it for money, I probably wouldn't be doing big band jazz. That's for sure.
That makes sense, but I'm not even sure that other genres would make a great deal of difference either, because people aren't buying music anymore. It's a different world for us.
Not anymore. And Apple is just driving the bus on that. With the the loss of a CD player in your laptop,
right? They determine the technology.
Yeah, and you know what? It's seductive. I don't really use CDs in my car. I don't want them cluttering up my car anymore. I just kind of plug my phone in or stream it or whatever. It's seductive. The convenience of it really is. But I worry about it from another standpoint in terms of it tends to limit you in terms of the scope of the music that you choose. Because you buy something on Amazon and it says to you, if you like that, you'll probably like this, which is almost like what you just bought. Or you can go on Pandora and make your own, Gordon Goodwin radio station. And it's just all that stuff in that little box without, stepping outside the lines like we kind of used to do in a more organic way when we go to Tower Records and walk around and we just see all the different artists.
Browse around. You're in every section. Yeah. Right.
So I think it's kind of limiting, I think, a little bit.
I agree. I personally have been stimulated and intrigued by shows like Pandora, programs like that or algorithms like that take you down a path that, you might not typically walk. But I think, I think it for people like us, artists, we are curious. So we're not just going to walk down one road. So for us, there's a value to it. But I think you're right. It does kind of dumb down the exploration of music or the opportunity to embrace other styles, because you don't get the tactile experience of walking through a record store generally and picking albums up because they look interesting, or you heard something about it, or you're hearing it, over the speakers in the store and it comes to your attention. When you make records now, do you hope to break even on them? Is that your is that your goal? I mean, I don't mean artistically, but I mean, it's, I'm speaking as a fellow artist, and a lot of other artists who basically continue to say their records, some pretty major artists have said this to me, their records have become, besides a creative outlet, a very expensive business card, and, where they make all their money is performing.
That's the pretty much the new business model. And it's, for us, performing isn't the answer either, because I have 20 people I have to get on an airplane or in a hotel room. So it's not like that has its own difficulties, and also I have 20 really busy in-demand guys that get paid a lot more money to stay here and play on movies, or to do a show at the Pantages, or to go on the road with, other artists that pay more than what I can afford to pay. So for me, making the record, making the music is the driver, it's the engine of the whole thing. But you have to look at it as just enhancing your brand, to use a industry, marketing term. It's just the whole thing that just kind of has to keep afloat. But I have to say, the conversation with people about supporting the arts and supporting subgenres like jazz is a difficult one to have. Because it's certainly I have a vested interest if people like jazz. But so I tend to shift the conversation more in the direction of what music of content can do especially for young people, in terms of a developing mind, to what listening to jazz or classical music or any kind of music that's a little less disposable than pop music can be. What that does to your ability to think and reason and problem solve and all those things that we need to do, as responsible citizens. So I had a conversation with a relative recently, and a Stevie Wonder song came on the whatever medium we were playing. Mm-hmm. And it was a pretty old Stevie song. Like, it was from Secret Life of Plants or one of those records, Right. And she goes, "Oh, I love Stevie Wonder." She goes, "Has he done any other new songs?" I go, "You mean since this one?" Yeah. She goes, "Oh yeah, I guess I haven't. Yeah, I really haven't bought a record for a while." I go, "When's the last time you bought a record?" She goes, and she couldn't even remember. It was like years and years. And I said, "Well, did you say you love music?" She goes, "Oh, I love music." I go, "I'm not sure you do. You haven't do you realize that by, going on YouTube and consuming your music that way, however expedient that is,
right?
You are pounding a little bit of a nail in the coffin, especially for artists that aren't in the mainstream, that aren't doing hip hop or doing pop music. Those people who are giving up vacations to make their records, or families are paying the price for it. And how long, as a responsible father, can you do that? How long can my records, the first couple cost a lot of money. I mean, the first number in the budget was a 1. And then there wasn't a comma for another 2 spaces, and then I started to move the cost down. Now the first number in the budget is a 5. And we never make that money back. No way do we make that money back. Now, so that leaves you with another viewpoint, which is, well, there are other reasons to do things besides money. Because for me, when I decided that this is who I was as an artist, this is the thing that I believed in, my life came into balance in an incredible way. And I became happier. I became everything just kind of flowed in a more organic way for me since I finally just declared, this is who I am. This is what I do. And you like me or you don't, so.
Right. And this is where I belong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you? Well, I know what inspired you, but why did you think it was a good idea to start a big band? What would possess you to do that? Is it just the pure drive and the love of the style and the music? Well,
I had a meeting with some friends of mine right before we were trying to kick the idea around about possibly going in the studio and just documenting the music that I had written. And they were asking me that question, like, now, do you think it could be a mechanism for you to get film work or to, they were looking at it from a business, and I had no answer to that other than this. I need this music to exist. I don't know why. I don't know what it's going to do, but I know if it doesn't exist, nothing will come from it. I know that much. So it really is my extension of listening to bands like Count Basie, or even in other genres like Stevie Wonder, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower of Power, groups that I've followed my whole life, and said, I think I can get a little piece of that. I think that I can maybe make a contribution in that genre. So it took me a long time, Terry. Man, I was working at Warner Brothers in the 90s. And we were working on animation, like Steven Spielberg shows like Pinky and the Brain and stuff. And it was really great. It paid well. We're winning Emmys. We're, having a great time using full orchestras on all the sessions. And yet it wasn't really who I was. A comment that I would get from the producers a lot was, hey, Gordon, that was a great cue. Love it. But next time, maybe a little less Gordon Goodwin, a little more Carl Stalling. And Carl Stalling was the Warner Brothers composer that kind of defined this animation scoring techniques. And that was the guy we had to emulate at that studio. So I started to think, is this my life? I go to Warner Brothers and I write like they want me to write. Then I go over to Disney and I write what they want me to write. Which is a perfectly noble way to make a living, to be sure. But maybe is there a point where I need to plant my flag? And write stuff that I really believe in because my heart tells me this is the music that should happen. So I did it, and I was probably 40 years old and well into my career, and I just committed the time and resources to make it come alive. And now here I am, 15, 17 years later talking to you. So.
Well, and I kind of think it was predestined for you a little bit because I read the story that when you were a little kid, you were watching the Mickey Mouse Club and you were standing in the middle of your living room pretending to conduct the orchestra. That's what your family remembers about you. So you were always drawn to a big sound, and the drama of and the excitement and the passion of a lot of instruments. And that kind of tells your story right there.
That is relevant. That's a relevant comment for sure, because the dynamic scope, not just of big bands, but of orchestras as well, is something that just thrills me. The range of colors, and to the point where if I'm listening to a piano soloist, I have to make an adjustment to all I'm going to get is that sonority, I'm not going to get a woodwind color or a string color. And something about that orchestration is something that just fascinates me. and how orchestration and composing are kind of intertwined. And it's sometimes hard to tell where one starts and the other stops. So you're right. That's a strong point. But I got to tell you the other thing, though. The Mickey Mouse Club was an early memory. The next one that I had was Herb Alpert. And I realized that, here's a guy that had he wasn't like a virtuoso on the trumpet, but he just had a sound. He had an identity.
Right.
And he became an early hero of mine. And matter of fact, the first time I met him, my wife had to kind of pull me away, step away from Mr. Alpert, because I was all over the guy. Mr. Alpert, oh my God, I gotta tell you, and my first band was a Tijuana brass band back when I was in grade school. So
right, but I hope you told him that. You did, right?
I did, yeah.
Good. That's important. People need to hear that.
The only non-music job I ever had was back then in fourth grade. I would mow the grass for neighbors, and they pay me $1 a yard, and I would just mow the grass, and then I could saved up about $12 and bought Herb Alpert songbook so that I could have music for the band to play. Other than that, the only skill set I really have is music, so I'm lucky that they pay me to do it.
Right, absolutely. So you were born in Wichita, Kansas. What are some of your favorite memories of growing up in Kansas? Do you have any or many?
I have none because I moved out here. I was 2 years old.
Okay.
So we used to go back to Kansas on vacation every summer. I've got a bunch of relatives, and these are farmers, man. My mom grew up on a farm, and so they're people of the earth, and they how can I put this the right way? We have very different values, and it's an interesting thing. Even though I will say this, I have a cousin named Gayleen, and she's the one that hit me to Oscar Peterson. I'm back there on the freaking farm with cows and pigs and everything. And I was telling her, yeah, I'm really kind of getting into jazz. She goes, oh, do you like Oscar Peterson? I said, I don't know. Who's that? She goes, oh, okay. She had like 4 Oscar Peterson records. And this is like in Emporia, Kansas.
Nice.
And so there's a little bit of a snobbish attitude about, East Coast and West Coast being where everything's happening, but the Midwest is a rich jazz history. And I came to learn that. And Gayleen was the first one to hit me to Oscar. And but I've gone back. We did a gig back there recently in Wichita, which is where I was born. Phat Band played there. And it was kind of a rush to be back where I was born and have, all the family there and people that I don't see very often. But I will say this, there was a weird thing that happened because we had a little potluck dinner after the concert. And my family and I were a little bit late after kind of, tearing the bandstand down and loading everything up. And we get to this thing and my whole family, extended family, is taking pictures and we're up against this wall. It felt like a red carpet thing. And they're like shooting photographs. And I felt this weird separation from them, and like they thought I was this big celebrity or something. And in my little world, I got a little taste of what it must be like for like a real celebrity.
Right. Hey, Gordon, I want you to hold that thought. We're going into our first commercial break. We're going to leave a little cliffhanger for the rest of that story, and we'll be right back to hear about that, to maybe talk about the weather and some politics and Gordon Goodwin's music life. We will be right back, so stick around.
Serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
This is John Carruthers, and you're listening to Making It with Terry Woolman.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Love it. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Gordon Goodwin. Gordon, we're listening to your music. What piece was that?
That was called Life in the Bubble.
Great.
And it's a comment on what we talked about earlier, what we tend to sometimes go through our lives surrounded by only the people that agree with us. And we eat all the same food all the time, and we listen to the same kind of music all the time. And we can create those little bubbles for ourselves, but I don't view it as healthy. So.
Nor do I, and I think it's really important, and that's one of the reasons I said yes to doing this, hosting this radio show, is to create a platform for people to speak freely and to share their ideas freely, and for hopefully for people to listen and not shut it out, because everybody's entitled to a point of view, but we all really need to speak our hearts, and you know, there's in our world with politics, with a very controversial president. With the weather, climate change, we woke up today and it was already 100 degrees in Los Angeles. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time in the world.
Yeah, and that's why we need the arts more than ever. Because
that's right.
That's how we heal. That's how I heal, is through the arts. So.
Likewise, brother. Absolutely. So you were just finishing up a story. We had a little bit of cliffhanger about playing in Wichita with the Phat Band.
So I was talking about after the concert, we went to like an aunt's house. So we had a little potluck with all the relatives, and they were taking photos and getting autographs. And I felt this weird, separation from them. And it occurred to me about what a real celebrity must feel, where he's known the world over, but yet it's hard for him or her to have a close set of friends. And so I'm thinking this in the kitchen of my aunt's house. And then the doorbell rings, right? And they go to answer the door, and it's George Clooney. And Clooney comes in, and he goes, so you think you're such a big celebrity? Look at me. And then followed by Jennifer Aniston comes in, and then Laurence Olivier comes in. And I said, hey, man, aren't you dead? He goes, yeah, you think you know me. I'm not dead. Are you going to let me continue?
Right.
Listen, I could have sold this whole thing until the Laurence Olivier thing. You wouldn't know that George Clooney didn't walk into my aunt's house. You would have never known.
Right. It's true.
He didn't really. That didn't happen. But
that's too bad, because that's one of my favorite stories of yours. I'm just going to keep on believing it was true.
I know, and pretty much it's going to spread around until it becomes true. There's enough people, you tell a lie enough times, what's the difference? It becomes actual.
Well, it's a powerful technique. It definitely is.
Who do you know that uses that technique, Terry?
Really? Actually, well, besides our president, who, I actually, I don't think I want to call the name out, but I worked on a TV show for a couple of years, and I was exposed to that kind of thinking, where you state things that are not true, and then they end up in print, and then you keep saying it, and people start to believe it. I found it very bizarre and very manipulative.
It's a hard thing because in this town, there's a little bit of an edict that kind of all is fair when you're talking and you're negotiating or you're working on things, because a lot of people will tell you exactly just what you want to hear without any thought of actually following through on that commitment. And so that's why you learn pretty quick that yes doesn't necessarily mean yes. You got to get the yes, for you to know if it's happening. So it is what it is. And there are some great people here in Hollywood. And,
it's a beautiful community.
Absolutely. But there are also some people that have a bit of a flexible version of reality, put it that way.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Do you still find yourself negotiating on your own behalf, or do you have people representing you in all areas of that now?
I got people, but I also have, sometimes people will do kind of an end run around the manager and the agent, and then I'll end up talking to him, and I'll get excited about the project. And for me, listen, the project is what excites me more than the money, even though I will take the check. But so sometimes I find myself, having those conversations because sometimes one influences the other. What they want a full orchestra. Well, then here's what the budget has to be, and so we have to have those conversations. Or it's an old relationship, and I've always kind of just negotiated directly with somebody, and then it feels a little weird to bring an agent in. But my manager, he does scold me whenever I do it because I'm not my best representative.
I don't think any of us are. Yeah. And, the system isn't really set up well for us to negotiate on our behalves. There's something, in a way, you can lose credibility, which is always very odd to me because nobody would know better than you, the artist, what's the best way to maneuver, to the goal.
Hey, Terry,
of making music happen. Yes.
And speaking of that, maybe this would be a good time. We never really talked about what this interview paid. Now, what were you thinking? Now, how you're thinking about?
Well, what I want to suggest to you is now is not the best time to have that conversation. You might have wanted to ask me before we started.
Oh, I never know the rules. That's why I'm no good at this. See?
Right. This is a labor of love show.
Oh, don't I? I know it well.
Right, I know. Well, let's speak about that. You have your own radio show as well, and it's one that I really enjoy listening to. What drew you towards hosting your own show?
Well, I was approached by K-Jazz to do it. I had the Big Phat Band had done a fundraiser for them at Walt Disney Concert Hall a few years ago, and I met a lot of the people there, and I've been listening to that station since I was in high school, so it's got a long history with me. And they asked if I would be interested in hosting a show, a couple hours a week. And it is. I've always loved radio. I listen to a lot of talk radio, and it's really I've got a lot of affection for the medium. And so my response was, I'd love to do it, but I'd like to ask that I have full reign to play anything I want as long as it has honesty, artistic honesty, and has content. So if I can play Count Basie. But if I want to play the Doobie Brothers, I'd like to be able to do that. Or John Williams.
Right.
Or Streisand. Or things that you wouldn't consider normally under the jazz umbrella. And I'll usually try to tie it in some way. And it's been a little bit of an adjustment for some of the listeners, but most people really love to have the borders pushed back a little bit. And the other thing that I asked to do is to be able to talk about music in kind of a nuts and bolts way. Like I'll say, now you hear that last chord in that Count Basie song. Now here are the notes in that chord, and I'll get my piano out and I go ding, 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 ding. Now here are the sharp 9. This note is a little bit dissonant with the third. This note, ding, and I'll play it. I go, this is what creates a little bit of tension. So I've found that people love hearing, even non-musicians love understanding a little bit more about music and how it's kind of how it's put together. And so I do a little bit of that, even though the segments like that take more time to prepare, so it kind of adds on to the time it takes me to put a show together. But it's so I probably talk more than most jazz disc jockeys for sure. I probably talk.
But that's part of what makes your show interesting to me. Is because I get to know you better.
If that's your opinion, then you'll probably like the show. But there are people that I get, emails all the time. Just shut up.
Shut up and play the music.
Right. Pretty much.
Right.
I tried to find the sweet spot there, but it's been a lot of fun. I've been doing it for about a year and a half now. And the times I've learned a lot about how to do it. I've gotten better at it. I've gained such respect for people like Vin Scully, who are able to talk in real time without putting any conversational spacers or ums, or and I pre-record the show so I can go back and fix it if I stumble over a word, if I, express something a little inelegantly. But but I'm getting better as I go, and it's really, really been a thrill.
Where can people find the show, the ones that haven't heard it yet?
K-Jazz is 88.1 FM if you're in the area in LA, but you can also listen to it. You can stream it. They have a K-Jazz radio app, and you can also go online at jazzandblues.org, jazzandblues.org, and you can listen to my show and all the great shows they have there on K-Jazz.
And we will also post those links on the Intertalk Radio Gordon Goodwin page that we're setting up. So everybody can find. Oh, absolutely. So you wrote your first big band chart, a song called Hang Loose, when you were in 7th grade. At that point of your life, were you already pretty accomplished as a pianist and sax player, or were you already focusing more on being a composer-arranger?
No. The focus was definitely on probably more saxophone playing. That was 7th grade. So
Yes, young. Well, that's young to write a big band chart.
Yeah, and I was lucky because my band director, a man named Robin Snyder, he said, "Come on, man, you could do it." And I said, "I don't know how." He goes, "You'll figure it out," which is really the truth about composing. Most of us just figure it out, and sit down and figure out what sounds good to us and find a way to get it on paper, or in these days into the computer. So I wrote it, and I made it kind of hooky enough and fun enough that I thought the other kids would like to play it. And we did it on the spring concert and recorded it on a little record. And I realized at that point, a lot of good musicians, but not a lot of people were writing music, especially for large ensembles. So I started to get an interest in it. And but I really wanted to keep my saxophone and my piano playing within arm's reach, because I didn't want to stand up there and conduct. I really wanted to perform and play with the musicians. And to this day, that is one of the most thrilling things, as you know, to be able to play and interact in that way with other musicians.
Absolutely.
It's the most intimate thing that you could do, almost,
That's the word that I would use. It's very intimate.
Yeah.
If you're doing it right. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. When it's working right, there's nothing like it. And so what we try to do with the Big Phat Band is to try to find that balance between preparation and spontaneity, because clearly all the ensemble parts are written out. They're all notated. So the guys have all the notes, all the phrasing, articulations, all that stuff is there. And yet we'll find ways to bring spontaneity even to the written ensemble passages. And it means that all of us have to be really present and listening. And it might be something like lay back on a phrase a little bit behind the time, or maybe one note is a little bit shorter, or just things that happen. And it requires, I have to try to get the guys to stop thinking that they're session guys here to play the parts as written perfectly, because I don't care about perfection. I care about commitment. And so it's the kind of commitment you hear from a band like Count Basie. And the way those guys got that was they played 300 gigs a year, or 300.
We're on a bus together every year.
Right. They were living together. They were living the music, and it got that next level of nuance because of that. And there's no rushing that. So the Phat Band's been together since 2000. So we have that shorthand now, even though the personnel has evolved over the years. There's still some key people that have stuck through the whole time, and there's a culture now of there's something that I've started to do, and I've stopped using the word hard. That chart is hard. That thing is hard, because I feel it predisposes you to an outcome. So and the guys will talk about a hard chart or an easy chart, and even these incredible virtuosos in my band still operate with a little bit of fear sometimes when it comes to music. And I say, let's call it challenging, because challenging is a little more proactive word. It implies it's a challenge, but we'll meet the challenge, So to try to get them, a lot of times session musicians, all they need to do is play the right notes in tune and the right rhythms. And that's probably good enough for a lot of sessions that they have to do.
Right. But not for us.
But not for you, not for the thing we're doing. So I really I'd rather have them make a mistake because they went for it than play something perfectly and have it just be, without that real commitment.
Well, some of my favorite moments in a few of my records are mistakes, and they're just so fantastic. They're so because people were just going for it.
Yeah, right.
And, there might not be the note that was on paper, but man, the commitment is so deep, and the passion and the joy that I've opted to keep some things. One of the very first times was one of my earlier albums, and Abraham Laboriel Sr. was playing bass, and he landed on the downbeat of the bridge or something on a note that had nothing to do with the chord. And powerful. And I, because it's, there's a seasoned player who just lays, puts everything on the floor, when he's playing. Right. And so when we went back in to listen, I made a note to Abraham and I said, I want to just go back and fix that one note. He said, I'll fix it for you. But he said, I think you might want to keep it and you will learn to love it. Yeah. And I just looked at him. He put his hand on my shoulder. He said, I'm happy to change it, but it was a pretty special moment. And I looked him in the eye and I believed him. And it's one of my favorite notes on that record. Yeah, I've never regretted that decision.
That's a perfect example, because Abe is just so full of joy and life, and even something that you would say, okay, that's a wrong note. And I'm doing air quotes around wrong.
Sure.
But it isn't wrong because Abe is in the moment,
That's right.
And so there was a reason, on some level that he played that note. And I agree. I mean, he's one of the most inspiring musicians, I've ever played with. And
likewise.
Yeah. And Nathan East, you mentioned Nathan's coming on the show. So
sure.
He's another one where his joy of just, and his gratitude for being on stage and playing music permeates everybody. And so those are the kind of people that I am attracted to. I have little use for the cynicism. It's easy to be cynical about the music business. So we talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show. No one's buying records, and how hard to make money and all that stuff. However true that stuff is, it doesn't matter.
No, we're not going to stop making records, and you can't, Gordon. You cannot. People that create art need to keep creating art.
Right.
It's such an important, critical thread to our culture, into the healing, and sharing joy and passion. We're heading into our next break right now. Give everybody your email. Not your email, your website.
Okay. My social security number is
and PIN number. Right.
My website is bigphatband.com.
And that is spelled P-H-A-T.
Yeah,
correct?
With a P-H-A-T, exactly. B-I-G-P-H-A-T. And now the acronym, if I remember, for Phat.
We're going to get back. We're heading in right now. I'm going to ask you the story of the spelling of Phat Band when we get back. I'm here with Gordon Goodwin. Yes. We'll be right back. Stick around. Thank you.
Adam Berry, and you're listening to Making It with Terry Wolf.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pitbullaudio.com.
Hallo alle zusammen, hier ist Chris Walden. Ich bin ein Komponist und Arrangeur und ihr hört heute Making It with Terry Wellman.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
And we're back. I'm here with Gordon Goodwin, and I'm sitting on the edge of my chair waiting to hear the story of why Phat Band is spelled P-H-A-T.
Yeah, so when we made the record and the track that you played us in here, Sing, Sang, Sung, was the first one we recorded. And I picked that deliberately because I wanted to take Sing, 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 the Benny Goodman one, and do a kind of a tribute to it, a parody of it. So I wanted to basically steal all the good concepts from it, but create a new composition that sounded like it. Because I was kind of a deliberate attempt to get my foot in the door, because everybody loves Sing, Sing, Sing.
Right.
So the tom-toms and all that. And it worked. I mean, we got people to listen to our stuff, which was mostly original compositions. But people it was just familiar enough that people got their attention. And so the idea that I had was that it would be kind of like a Quincy Jones record, where Quincy has his foot firmly in the pop music area, from his work with Michael Jackson and others, but also started off as an arranger, right? Writing for Count Basie, Frank Sinatra, and all that stuff. So I saw us in a similar way, where we had the kind of the values of a jazz band, but also the production acumen of a pop record. It would sound like a pop record with that kind of attention to detail. So I didn't want to call it the Gordon Goodwin Big Band. I wanted it to have a title that reflected a more contemporary sensibility. So a friend of mine, who's my agent now, actually, and said, well, what about the Phat Band? And I said, so what does Phat mean? He goes, well, Phat is an acronym in hip-hop for pretty, hot, and tempting. Now, there are two other acronyms that I probably can't say over the air for what Phat means. And but I thought, okay, pretty, hot, and tempting kind of sounds, it has a good energy to it. So,
by the way, you actually can say it on the air. Feel free.
I'm gonna let you say it, Terry. No,
we'll keep it moving.
Okay. So I ended up going with it. I was a little nervous, but he said, "Look, man, Chick Corea has like 2 different bands a year. You can just change it later if you don't like it."
Right.
So we went with it, and we had a couple of nervous moments when who was the guy that said he copywrote that he trademarked that word, wasn't MC Hammer, but was one of those early rapper guys. Mm-hmm. And he was on Letterman. He goes, yeah, and I filed the trademark on the word fat. I'm thinking, oh, great.
Was that Grant Grandmaster Flash?
I don't know.
Back that far? Okay.
Yeah. But it was back, it was in, the year 2000. So whatever
sure.
that was. But it has not been an issue. And now it's kind of, I guess it's like Kleenex or Xerox. It's just kind of a generic term for what we are. So,
sure.
People actually call it the Phat Band as opposed to Gordon Goodwin's Big Phat Band. I was shrewd enough to put my name in the title.
Very clever.
Whatever reason. But, anyway, I didn't think we would ever do any live gigs. I thought, let's do a Steely Dan thing. Record it,
right.
No tour,
Right, make it sound great. Yeah.
I thought that the prospect of trying to book gigs and call all those guys and work out the schedules, I didn't even want to think about it. But little by little, we got an opportunity, did the gig. It was a blast. And then we did another gig. And before I know it, now, it's over half of my energy is to keep the Big Phat Band going.
And also you managed to get all 20 people on a plane over to Japan. I mean, you're not just doing local clubs.
Yeah,
so
we've traveled. We've gone to Australia 3 times. We've gone to Japan probably about 10 times. Went to France, and last year we went to Prague. Went to Lviv in the Ukraine. It's been fantastic. I have to say, it's a little bit sad to say that it's a little easier for us to book this band in Europe and in Asia than it is here.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. And that is sad. And, because it's an American art form too, so
it is. At the Blue Note in Japan, to see us, it costs about $90 to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Plus dinner and drinks. Now,
plus dinner.
Imagine that here in Los Angeles. Can you imagine any act that could go and command a $90 ticket plus dinner and drinks?
Right.
I mean, so there's a different perception of, I realize that the people in Japan, they know we come there once a year or once every year and a half. So it's a little bit of an event. So okay, I can spend the money on that. But it's definitely been a problem for artists here in LA for a long time to get people to come out.
Right.
And, so there's some weird, inertia issue that's going on with live music here. But
not so much in New York. I've spoken to a lot of our artist friends there and musicians, but LA is sort of sadly a wasteland for live performance. Yeah. They make it really difficult for band leaders, myself included, to keep a band together.
And it's probably gotten worse. The fact that the traffic is just untenable, it's a non-starter. You can't.
That's right.
Go anywhere without making a commitment of at least I better have a 2-hour window. And so
that's right.
That is, am I going to stay home and turn on Netflix, or am I going to go out and drive to Hollywood to see the band? It's a problem. It definitely is a problem. So maybe there's geographic problems with LA as well.
I think that's part of it. I want to ask you a question about your time working at Disney. After you went to Cal State Northridge and continued your musical education there and graduated from college, you worked in Anaheim at Disneyland Park with some musicians that you still work with to this day. But a lot of great musicians went through that experience of working there. And I'm curious, what were some of the most valuable lessons that you learned from working at Disney? Is there anything that stands out?
That's a great question. And I really learned how to be a professional musician at that place because my first job, we were backing up some singers and dancers, and we had to do 5 or 6 shows a day. And it became a thing of, I always could play well when I felt like it. But when I did feel like it, my energy and my attitude would start to slip. And I learned at that job that that's not okay. You don't wait for inspiration. You prime the pump. You get the inspiration. You summon it. And I think that was the main thing that I got from that experience. I got my first commercial writing job at Disneyland. They asked me to write music for a Mouseketeer reunion show, and it was like the old Mouseketeers, like Tommy and Lonnie and Cubby and
right, but this was the one with Britney and Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake, right?
They had the new ones and the old ones, so they brought back the ones from the 50s and
combined them with
the kids. So it was really a fun thing. Annette wasn't there, sadly, but so that was the first commercial job I ever got, and I almost screwed it up because I almost wrote too jazzy and too hip for the room. The show was not about that, and I just thought, they just want me to do what I do. Which I almost crossed the line, and I heard the music director at the time say something to somebody about me, and I was standing around the corner backstage, and I heard him say that Gordon Goodwin, man, he's got no commercial sensibility, and I didn't even know what that meant. I do now. I do
yes,
now.
You do.
If I get a job and Disney calls me to write another arrangement of Let It Go, I know what to do. I'm not going to sneak any of my stuff in there or a cool passing chord or anything that my instincts say, this would make this interesting, Gordon. Put this in. I know how to be a professional and separate that. And the Big Phat Band has helped me because I know I have this oasis of fatness over here that no one tells me what to write there.
Right.
So that enables me to go into a Disney environment and give them what they want, give them what they're paying for.
So that creates an artistic balance for you that allows you to be more commercial when required, but it doesn't feel like you're compromising yourself artistically.
That's exactly correct. And sometimes working in film and TV, it can be a frustrating thing where you've done 17 versions of the same 2-minute cue, and version 18 happens to be the same as version 1, and they go, "Oh, we like that." In the meantime, it's been 2 weeks and you've had no sleep as you do the 17 different versions to get all the way back around to where you started. That kind of thing happens again and again and again. And yet your job is to say, yes, sir, you got it. Let's do it. Oh, let's do another version. Let's do another version. And the best people that survive in that genre are people that know how to do that and not take it personal and have the stamina and the will to power through, find the solution, sell the cue. Get it so the director buys off and they move on to the next one. It's not about inspiration. It's not about what sounds good to you most of the time. Maybe once in a while, maybe you get a project where you're perfectly aligned with your aesthetic with the director and the producer, and that's a great thing when it happens. But it doesn't always happen. That's for sure. Right.
That's true. But I want to ask you about. Yeah, go ahead, Doran.
I was going to say.
I want to ask you about you. Go. I defer to you.
Are we professionals or not?
Well, we're two radio talk show hosts, so we're used to talking.
That's true.
And we're two band leaders and producers.
I'll sum it up. We talked about gratitude, and that's what I came around to through that experience was on my worst day, when I've had to do 18 versions of the same cue, I get to write music today. How many people get up and would love to have that problem? So that's another thing that I've gained as a perspective, that even if I've had no sleep, I get to go out to my studio and write music, and that is a precious thing.
That is for sure. And I think bringing gratitude to everything that you do is the way to have a good life, and to create art, and to stay relevant and to be happy.
To stay relevant and to stay young too.
Absolutely.
Keep that.
We have about 5 minutes left in the show, and before I get to my closing question, I want to ask you on a personal level. You and Lisa have been married since 1985. You've got 3 kids, right?
Yes, that's right.
How do you find the balance in your life with staying healthy? Being an active husband and father, and still manage to get some exercise and get some sleep and keep doing all the wonderful things that you're doing. Where do you find balance?
I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing it and scheduling because if you're an artist, you have to be able to create a structure for yourself because you don't go to a job. You don't have a 9 to 5. I go here and I do this and then I come home and you have to create that for yourself. So that's been a thing that I've learned to do. Is schedule my time and give myself, like little goals and deadlines throughout the day. And exercise is a big part of it, where I realize, at some point where I just can't eat whatever I want and just keep pounding my body and not getting any sleep. And it's going to start to push back at some point. So I make that a priority. And the same thing, with time for the family. And it's one of those things when your kids are growing up, I want to go to the basketball games. I want to go to the dance recitals. And yet, I got a cue to write. And I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? Sometimes I was sitting there, on the bleachers writing music while I watch, my kids play basketball. And so sometimes there's compromises, to make. And, but you're right. It is about balance. And it's in terms of who you choose for your life mate, better get that balance and better not be threatened by the fact that music is a source of life for a lot of us.
Right. It's a deep source. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And so if you're, I mean, I've seen a lot of musicians over the years that, you know, had to get a divorce because in the end, their wife couldn't hang in there with the fact that music is not going anywhere, and it's a demanding mistress, you know. So
yes.
you need to make the right choice in that regard for sure.
Well, you chose somebody who's also a creative person, as did I. You know, we have creative spouses, so it in some ways I think it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, definitely does. Definitely does.
I have a question that I ask all of my guests at the end of each show, and I want to ask you. At this chapter of your life, Gordon, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self?
The epiphany I had around age 40 when I was working at Warner Brothers, we talked about it earlier.
Yes.
Where I finally got the courage to say, this is who I am. And you like me or you don't. And either of those are okay. I wish I would have found that when I was in my 20s or my 30s. But on the other hand, I didn't. I was going through the growth the exact experiences that I needed to go through in order to be where I am today. And so I have to say, Terry, I don't spend a whole lot of time regretting that. Sometimes I listen to old music I've written, even music 5 years ago, pretty recently. And I think, what was that guy thinking? Why did he make that choice? Because it does seem like a different person wrote that music. But I very rarely go back and edit and change anything. I said, let's move on. Let's move on to the next piece of music. So it's kind of both things. It's kind of an awareness of my journey, and you can't help but wish that I wouldn't have gone through some of the painful things or the mistakes I made. But on the other hand, those mistakes and that pain was a gift, because that's how we grow. That's how we get better. And so that's the thing that I think would be good. I talk to young people. I go, when you're going through tough times, just like we are as a country right now, right? Mm-hmm. I believe that we are building something right now. And it's hard to know what we're building, and it's hard to know how it's going to get better, but I really believe that it is. And I believe that about any painful experience. That's the gift of growth. And you have to try to remember that as you're going through it.
I think that's extremely clear, and you know that circles back to gratitude again, because you have an awareness and appreciation that you bring to the table, as well as your musical skill set, and I think that's part of what makes your music interesting to me. You know, it's vibrant, it's organic, and it's not predictable, and and I love that about your writing. And your band. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much. It is trying to strike that balance of having it be just unpredictable enough, but with some familiarity so you can grab onto it, The one thing I would say that kind of permeates all my music is kind of an optimism, and I'm lucky because I've maintained my optimism through life. And I think there are some people that are uncomfortable with the optimism they hear in my music. Sometimes if you're going through a rough time, someone being all happy is a little bit annoying. So, sometimes. I think that's the Gordon I want to look at in the mirror every day.
Yeah.
Is that optimistic guy? So
great. Well, on that note, I want to say thank you so much for spending the hour with me, Gordon. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you today.
Really fun. Thanks so much, Terry. Congratulations on the show.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectica Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.